This segment is brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.
Welcome back to HGV College Prep. I'm your host, Dominic LaBeouf, and this episode we're going into a little bit of a history lesson because we're going to look at the biography of one of the most influential people in all of human history, which is Julius Caesar. So since his biography is so long and there's a lot of detail in it, we're going to skip his early periods and focus on most of his achievements. But a little more background on Roman politics. The way you rose up in the Senate was by increasing something called your auctorita, which means that by doing accomplishments outside of political affairs and increasing your popularity, you have a higher chance of becoming higher up in power since more people like you and you'll be doing more good for the state of Rome. But that's where we get the word authority from auctorita, the Latin word. But now let's start Caesar's biography. So we're going to jump to when he was governor of Spain. So after rising the ranks in the Senate, he finally became governor of Spain. And he was very broke at this time because he would spend lots of his money on lavish parties to increase his auctorita. But once he went to Spain, he started taking over and invading the local tribes there, which made him really rich after he got all of their loot after conquering them. So the people loved him, and he was in Spain. And then when his governorship ended in Spain, he came back to Rome and made one of the greatest alliances out of all of human history, called the First Triumvirate. And it included the richest man of Rome, his name was Crassus, the best military leader in Rome, Pompey, and Caesar himself. So the way the alliance worked was Crassus wanted tax reliefs, Pompey wanted land for his soldiers, and Caesar wanted to be the highest position in the government. And since Pompey and Crassus were more liked than Caesar, they could help him get this high position called consul. So Caesar became consul and quickly made the offers that he told Pompey and Crassus they would get. After his consulship was over, which only lasted 1 year, a lot of his enemies really hated him. And since he was consul, a Roman law was you could not be prosecuted after. So the Senate sent him to northern Italy, which is a real bummer because nothing was happening in northern Italy. It was full of Germanic tribes, and the state of Rome was in southern Italy. So Caesar wasn't too fond of this, and being the man he is, he just started invading northern Italy with the Germanic tribes there, and it's called Gaul. So Caesar conquers all of Gaul, which is most of modern-day France, a little bit of Britain, northern Italy, a little bit of Germany, and he does this through a series of military campaigns, which we can go into lots of detail about, but we don't have time here. And he does that, and he's very successful. He becomes very wealthy after this too, and the people love him because he's increasing Rome's territory and wealth. So his auctorita shoots through the roof, and this makes the Senate even more mad, and they request Caesar to return home immediately. So Caesar sees this, and after he conquers all of it, he does return home. But before he enters Rome, he knows that if he enters with his army, he's going to start a civil war. But he enters anyway, and he crosses the Rubicon River to enter Rome. And that's where you get the modern day phrase, crossing the Rubicon, to mean something that you can't take back after you complete it. So he crosses the Rubicon, enters into Rome, civil war begins, and the civil war is against Julius Caesar in the Senate. But while Julius Caesar was away in Gaul, Crassus died, and after Crassus's death, Pompey takes leadership over the Senate. So really the civil war is against Caesar and Pompey. And Caesar immediately begins preparing for the civil war, but he also begins to prepare a treaty in hope that him and Pompey can form an alliance or form a treaty to end the civil war just immediately. And Pompey only prepares for that, and he doesn't prepare for the civil war itself. But the two generals meet and quickly realize that they cannot form a treaty together, and Caesar totally destroys Pompey in Rome. So Pompey has to flee to Greece. Caesar chases after Pompey, destroys him again in another battle. Pompey flees to Egypt, is assassinated in Egypt. Then Caesar flees to Egypt. He starts an affair with Cleopatra. Then he starts invading some of the tribes and countries around Egypt. And that's where he says his famous saying, Veni, Vidi, Vici, which means I came, I saw, I conquered. And then after his campaigns in Egypt, he comes back to Rome in order to make Rome well again and to restore some of the political systems that were in Rome, because Rome was in total anarchy once the Civil War started. So he goes to Rome, he starts wearing lots of purple, he makes statues of himself next to the gods in order to try to portray himself as something higher than life. And because of this, the senators become jealous and they assassinate him on the Ides of March. So that's it for this episode. Come back next week in order to see more of HBV College Prep so you can learn something a little more new. Thank you.
This segment was brought to you by St. Martin and Bourke. Know your rights.